So when do you use CSS Grid or Flexbox? Uh, how do you use these technologies to create a very basic component like this one? How do you just write code so that even without thinking, things will be responsive, even on these ridiculously small display sizes? Um, when do you use gap instead of using margins? You know, all these kind of questions is stuff that I'm really obsessed with when I'm learning CSS. So I just want to show you how I would approach this problem, and maybe you'll pick something up for yourself. This video is really meant for beginners and people who have been doing it for quite a bit of time, maybe like, I don't know, 3, 6 months. But, maybe they want some reinforcement of how are things done in a very nice and robust way. I hope you enjoyed the video. So the first thing, obviously, I decided to do the project, grab the Figma and starter files. The next thing to do would be to just create the folder you want to create, call it whatever you want, and grab whatever files you want from Frontend Mentor. You could grab the index.html, images, that kind of stuff. And then just drag your Figma file into Figma if you do have it. Otherwise, work with the images in the design folder. Then I usually just look around, just, build my understanding of the component. And I usually do this step in my head of just drawing these kind of boxes. But in this case, I just wanted to show you how it might look like, in my head, just drawing this stuff out and seeing how I might split this stuff within my HTML. Then you might want to create the folders and files you might need. I created a folder called styles, and within it I created reset and main.css files. In my root I have font size 62.5%. All this means is that instead of 1 rem equaling to 16 pixels, it will now equal to 10 pixels. So for example, 1.6 rem would be 16 pixels. Other stuff is just some basic CSS resets that you can find anywhere online by googling CSS Reset. Then of course, just link your files to the HTML. Okay, so I won't really be needing anything from here, except just showing you exactly what I'm building. So the first thing we can do once we've linked our CSS files, let's just do the attribution. So if I save that, refresh, there's nothing on my browser. The browser is at 375 pixels wide. So let's do the attribution. I'll just zoom in a bit. Attribution, this over here. Just the standard stuff Frontend Mentor provide. I'm just gonna put my website link, just to put something in, my name, voila, it shows up. Next thing is I want to create this card inside of body. So I'm just gonna use a div. I suppose you could use an article depending on the context, but I'm gonna use div just to keep stuff simple, yeah? I'm gonna give the div a class of card, so the entire container will be called card for us. Then we're gonna have an image for this blue thing here, and it's gonna have a source with the correct source image. Alt, I'm not gonna fill that right now. And then we have card image as the class. Cool. It looks atrocious as it should. Then we have a div class card text. Now I'm basically creating a container for this text here. Yeah. And this, I'm assuming this would be a component in some website. So I'm assuming there's a H1, maybe already there's a H2. Maybe this actually should be a span. Maybe it's not a heading at all, and that's okay. It really depends on the context. For now, I'm just going to use a H2, yeah? Class, card heading, and just put the text in. Let's see how that looks like, cool. And then we're going to have a paragraph for this, yeah? So again, class, card detail, and just paste in code, or rather the text. Okay, that pretty much does it for the HTML part, So if I just spread this stuff out, just so you can kind of see it a bit more clearly, we have our card, the entire thing. We have this as an image, basically will be the top section, and then we have this card text, which will be this bottom section over here, yeah? And now we can start styling this stuff. Okay. Let's see. So now that we have our HTML, and we should probably have it just in case we need to refer back to it. the first thing to do is, how do you grab a font, right? So there is the style guide. And we know that the font family is outfit. You have this link here, so that's quite nice. We know that the weights are 400 and 700. Cool. So let's see how we can grab this. So if you just Google, Google fonts, or if you just go there, you search for outfit if you were looking, and then all you have to do is select what you want, regular 400 and bold 700. Okay. Now you have two choices. One, you can paste this link into your head. I'll show you, whoops, not Discord. There you go. You can paste that into here and just like another link for styles. Or you can import into your CSS. So that's what I'm gonna do. I always grab this, I copy it, and etc. So, and okay, let's see what we're doing now. So the first thing we're gonna do is grab our font, then we're gonna style our body, then our card, image, card text. Then we're gonna style our actual text. Then we'll just do the attribution. Yeah. Let's get started. So we grab our font, and with all the weights that we wanted, we have body now. And let me just go on the actual design so I can refer back to it. Body, okay, width will be 100%. I always do this. You probably don't have to, but just do. If you want to read it in your code. I like being very explicit in how I write things. Minimum height. So you're telling the browser, look, even if the content is not 100 view height, make sure you're at least 100 view height anyway. 100 view height is like the height of your screen, basically. Not screen, the available window height. Yeah. So it's really referring to your browser height. Yeah. Min height. So just set that. And then, but if you're bigger, it's okay. You're going to be bigger than 100 height because this is only a min, not a max, or not a default. So you don't want to just do height or max height. I do min height. We want to do display grid. And why do we want to do display grid? Well, go over here. So we want to do this display grid because this first section, right? We want it to take as much space as possible. And then there's going to be this tiny little box here for our attribution. And we want to position them in a certain way. So grid is quite nice to use for that. So straight away, when I do grid, it actually creates a grid, but I want to be kind of very specific about it. Let's just open this in Setup. And 375, perfect. Exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to use grid, which is a shorthand in which I can set grid template rows and grid template columns. The only thing I do is I separate it by this /. You can also do areas and I think some other stuff like auto flow and all that stuff. I just like setting these to usually if it's a simple grid. And if you're sometimes not sure what a shorthand does, when you can just set a lot of stuff in a single CSS property, then if you just go over here, we're going to click on body. I'm going to click on this little arrow next to grid. And you can see exactly what it sets. Okay, so we've set our grid template rows, we've set our columns, and everything else is implicit. So grid sets this automatically, the other stuff, yeah, if you don't declare it. So that's what a grid is, yeah. 1FR, take as much space as you can, but there is a min content for that little bit of text. And then we just want one single column to spread across, yeah? So let's carry on. It's going to be a little gap between the rows. So over here is going to be a little gap because we always want some space between this card component and the attribution that's going to go below it. So 75 pixels, I thought, why not, yeah? Place items to the center. So I'm going to position everything perfectly to the center. So place items, another shorthand for align items and justify items. If you just set one value here, it's going to assume both of them have the same value of center. And you can always see it here, align items and items, yeah? Background, so we're going to set that gray bluish. There's going to be a little bit of padding. And the way I got this padding is I clicked on the card, and by holding Option on Mac or Alt on Windows, I clicked and selected the card, holding the Alt or Option, and I'm just moving my mouse from this card to outside of it. And then it tells me the distance between this card and the next closest component, box, anything. I can see 2.8, 8.5, 2.7, not massively interested in 1 pixel difference, so I ignored it. And then we have a font family outfit. So I'm setting it in body because I know that our design only has one single font family. And I know that my paragraph, my H2 will inherit this font family. So unless you set something specifically, paragraphs, headings, any text element, I think, inherits font from the top. If there's nothing to inherit, then it goes to the default value, which I forgot what it is. I think sans serif. Then we can style the card. So, okay, let's see what we have. So we've got our padding now, cool. We've got our grid working. You can see that the 7.5 rem is working. The only thing that's messing up our width of our website or page is this image, but that's going to be fixed very soon. So for the card, we're going to do 100%, but also max width of 32 rem or 320 pixels, because I know that here in mobile view or in desktop view, this card is only 320 pixels, so we can just set that straight away. Height will be auto. You don't have to write this. Height auto is the default. I like writing it, again, because I like seeing the code. I don't write everything the default, obviously, that would be too much, but just the main stuff. Padding. So the padding is quite specific, and the way I got that is the same as I got the padding before. So if I select the image, the blue thing, I'm gonna hold my Option key. I can see 1.6 on the bottom, top, right. So then if I select this text container, I can see 4 on the bottom. So that's how I got this 4. And what padding, or rather what every browser does, it assumes this is top, this is right, this is bottom, and because left is not declared, right? Because left is not declared, we're gonna assume it's 1.6 rem. Same thing as we used for right, it's gonna be for left. Background will be white for the card, and you can already see that little padding. And let's add some border radius. So now you can see that kind of soft border radius. Display will be flex. Now I like using flex to position children, right? So my card is the parent, and the children are the image and the text container, or the text, basically. And then I want to use a gap between them. So I don't like using margin too much. I prefer using gaps if I can. In this case, gap will be 24 pixels, but let's see how this looks like in the code. Flex flow, another shorthand for flex direction and flex wrap. So we're gonna say flex direction is column, flex wrap is no wrap. I don't want you to wrap, and I want you to be a column. And I want the gap to be 2.4 rem. So you'll see two things that happen. One, we've added a gap, but two, because we declared column, our image, instead of being width of whatever the hell you usually are, it changed to width like 100% basically. And that's quite an interesting behavior from Flex that you would have to read into the documentation for. Like, I know it happens. I'm not sure quite why it happens, but just be aware that this is something to watch out for. And of course, let's add some box shadow. This box shadow, I didn't write it. Looks quite complicated, I suppose, maybe, or something, because of this specific color. All I did, actually, was in my Figma file, I went here, I clicked on this, and where is the code? Here, I'll literally just copy the box shadow. Yeah, you can find online resources if you don't want to be playing too much around with this kind of stuff. That's okay. I think that we're done with the card body now. Yeah, so we've got our paddings, we've got this column between the image and the text. So we can start styling the image and the text. The image, all it really needs at this point is the border radius. But I also like setting the width, again, just like I said with my height auto, just to see it, yeah? See it in the code, and there we go, border radius. Next thing is to style this kind of container for our text. So card text, display of flex, it's another column. I'm going to align items to the center, and you'll see why in a moment. Gap will be 16 rem. Actually, we might not need this. And text align is center. Again, So now you see there's a nice gap here. Text align center, and just like I explained with font family, that the bottom, the children will inherit, well, they're going to inherit text align as well. Yeah, so you can set this in card text if you know everything will be the same. Okay, so just so you can see the design stuff. What's next? Padding inline. So this is another shorthand for padding left and padding right. Yeah. So let's see, 1.6 rem. Okay, and we're gonna have to style the text just so you see exactly. But you can kind of see that this text is not really taking 100%, right? It has 32 pixels away from the sides of the card container. And this, it doesn't look like it, but it's also actually much smaller. Yeah, so it should be like that really. There's a 16 pixel padding in the card text parent that's affecting both of these children. Okay. And we can just style the card heading. Very basic font size, font weight. Line height, I had to guess. Oops, I just messed it up somehow. That's okay. I'll fix that in a moment. Line height, I had to guess, to be honest. It wasn't very clear to me, you know, the line height. I wasn't quite sure on it. I'm not quite sure why this padding thing is messing me up. That's okay, we'll fix that in a moment. Color. I'm just going to make this slightly bigger just so we see it this way. Card heading, and then we can style the card detail. Font size 1.5 rem, font weight, letter spacing, so it's slightly more squished, and line height 1.8 rem. Again, I was just guessing. And of course, we want a slightly lighter color, just like here. And then we can just style the attribution. Nothing major, just more styling. I'm going to have another column. Going to be a little gap. Now there's this gap between these guys here. I'm going to set a color for this. Each link will have its own color. So this is slightly darker here. We're going to transition the color actually on hover or when we tab, literally with our keyboard tab key, when we tab over it. And the way you can write this is attribution link is hover and then separated by a comma or its focus within. Let's just change the color. So let's see. Hover works, and I can click tab and shift tab just to go back, and you can see it's working properly. Okay, so now what do we want to fix? 375. So what I'm thinking is this padding of 1.6, we're going to take it from card text. We're going to add it to card detail, and everything should be okay. Yeah. There's nothing really else that we have to do, to be honest. And I would be pretty content with this result. Yeah. So if I just, whoops, I want to inspect. Well, let's see. We've got our grid working. Got our paddings, attribution sorted. Our card is this nice flex column with this gap. Our image, again, like I said, don't need the width. Remove the width. Same with the card, you know, height, okay. Max width, you do need. So that's there. Width, you probably don't need the width actually, because the image is trying to stretch the thing. The max width is taking care of it. Card text, again, is just another flex column over here. Yeah, very nice, very simple. Maybe you learned a thing or two about using flex or grid. I don't code like some people do, which they would set a margin, you know, margin bottom to this or margin top to this to space it, or the entire card container would have a margin top. I don't like writing like that. I like being very specific, and I really like using flex. And in case like you're kind of concerned, like what is the best practice? Like what do I write? How do I write it? All that stuff. As long as it works, as long as it's very easy to read and understand, it's okay. You know, Flexbox is there for you as a tool to use whenever you want and however you want. I suppose I don't really look at like, oh, does it support Internet Explorer? I'm not really interested in a browser that's no longer supported. A lot of modern websites are not written for an Internet Explorer. It's just waste of time and resources spending time on something that's going to yield very little, in my view. You might want to obviously code stuff your own way if you are interested in making things work for Internet Explorer, because I'm not sure if all this code will work for it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice little short video. Hopefully you learned something useful. Cheerio.